Thanks very much, Greg. Good morning, everybody. What an honour to be your first speaker, and I'm delighted to contribute again to this year's Congress of Business. In its fourth year and really growing in strength, one of the key legacy pieces from Glasgow's hosting of COP26 back in 2021, and also a centrepiece of Glasgow Climate Week, which has also grown in its scale and ambition since we launched it 3 years ago, really just as a fringe to the All Energy Conference. It's now growing and becoming part of the city's annual calendar. And it's a reminder of just how interconnected business, the economy and sustainability all are, and how much they're going to continue to be so closely connected and so important to each other. The calibre of speakers that are here for today's event, I think that in itself demonstrates Glasgow's commitment to an understanding of how important it is that we secure a safer and cleaner and more sustainable future for all of us. The Glasgow Chamber of Commerce is publishing a fantastic report today showcasing some of the work that's been undertaken in the 5 years since Glasgow hosted COP26. And I was asked to reflect on some of that in my contributions today. I know that Alison will give you an even wider flavour of what's been happening in the city and what Glasgow's incredible business community have been doing. But I think I'll maybe reflect on a more global scale to begin with anyway. And since COP26, I suppose we could say that the world has both changed utterly and not changed anywhere near enough. The climate action that was committed to in the Glasgow Accord at COP26 has not happened at the pace that the planet needs it to, that our communities need it to. It's been crowded out by conflict, by economic crises of a national and global order. And back in late 2021, when the then newly elected President Biden had just left Glasgow, when his climate envoy John Kerry, who spoke at the Glasgow City Chambers and indeed was seen wandering up and down the Maryhill Road at one point, when they had just left the city, I doubt that many of us would predicted that another certain individual would not that long after return as the world's most powerful leader, declaring the existential threat to our planet to be a hoax and emboldening climate deniers, delayers and charlatans across the world, including in these islands. And we now have some of them ascending to positions of real political prominence, at least in some parts of these islands. So it's hard sometimes not to feel a bit despondent. But if we were to do that, then we wouldn't get out of our beds in the morning, I suppose, and we wouldn't feel that urgency and that continued commitment to climate action, which, excuse me, I believe everyone in this room does. While this is the global environment that we're operating in, Glasgow is different. And when I say Glasgow, I don't just mean the City Council or the administration that I lead. I mean Glasgow as a community, the community that's represented at this Congress of Business today. We have held our nerve. We've resisted joining our race to the bottom. And the fact that today's event is organised by the Chamber of Commerce, our leading business representative voice in the city, shows that this is not just a political priority in Glasgow. It is a priority of our business community, of our grassroots communities as well. And it is something that Glasgow remains completely committed to. COP26 was a defining moment for Glasgow, and we as a city are continuing to leave our mark on the global climate agenda. There was something about our honesty, I think, in the way that we positioned ourselves in the run-up to COP, to being COP host, but also our relatability to so many other cities around the world. We set a benchmark for post-industrial cities who are still dealing with the legacies of their past, but prepared to take on the challenges of the future. We gave the concept of the just transition genuine substance by talking about the experience of Glasgow's own unjust transition from an industrial era through deindustrialisation, and taking that question away from a world of targets and jargon. We sought to make that whole idea of a just transition to a sustainable net zero future something that was relevant to the everyday experiences and the life chances of ordinary folk in our city. And I know that that's something that many folk who are on the sharp end of the global urban transition agenda still grapple with making those connections back to ordinary residents and communities. I want to focus my remarks today on the practicalities of the urban climate transition, which really found voice at COP26, perhaps for the first time. The first one being the core issue of climate investment and the partnerships that the urban transition demands, and how we get the cash, the cold hard cash, into cities to drive that transition in energy, in housing retrofit, in transport decarbonisation, and in the transition in our businesses and industries, which will then actually deliver those tangible benefits for our communities, as well as the emissions reductions that we really need to be delivering. And secondly, the economic opportunities that that net zero journey continues to present, and how Glasgow's host city status has contributed to our ability to capitalise on those opportunities. Under the direction of our host today and our great friend of Glasgow, Greg Clark, the City's Commission for Climate Investment was launched at COP26. Later, it became 3CI, and it set out to provide some practical responses to that question of how the urban transition will be resourced. And the answers lie in collaboration and in innovation to a very significant degree. Technical innovation, yes, but also how we innovate in creating new financial models and partnerships, and how we innovate in bringing to the table the institutional capacity and expertise capable of attracting investment to cities on a scale that certainly cities the size of Glasgow's haven't really sought before. Our climate transition, we have costed and set out in our net zero route map as being up to £40 billion worth of investment required, depending at the pace that we go. That is massive, and it is something that we undoubtedly are going to need, as we say in Glasgow, honours, and as what most of the rest of the world would call collaboration, to get that delivered. And for that reason, that kind of scale, for us and for many others, it hasn't been an easy process. But guided by 3CI over those past years since COP26, we've seen consortiums come together, bringing together cities, financial institutions, pension funds, for example, as well as technical expertise, to commit to projects that demonstrate both social and environmental and emissions reductions impact, and a patient return on that investment that we need to deliver that transition. Bristol's probably the UK's standout example. The city's created a green investment model which is beginning to deliver city-scale decarbonisation. And in Glasgow, we've been engaging with and learning from enormously our friends in Bristol. And supported by an initial £4 million by Glasgow City Council, we are progressing our own bespoke climate investment model. I've spoken about it at the Congress of Business before, and I'm delighted that the specialist team who are currently compiling the business case for that, will complete their work during this summer. And before the end of this year, our expectation is that we will have our Glasgow climate investment model ready to go to the market with and start bringing those investment partners into the city with confidence that we've got the right financial model to make it work for all of us. It's got the potential, I believe, to attract the levels of investment that will deliver mass decarbonisation and properly stimulate and put that momentum behind Glasgow's transition, particularly around heat and energy. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that we are not already delivering. And I believe that that firm net zero commitment and route map that we've set out as a city, without that, we could speculate as to whether we would have secured investments like the Gren Group's £350 million heat and energy plant in the southwest of Glasgow, to name just one example. But with just a bit more de-risking capital from government, from partners like the Scottish National Investment Bank, the National Wealth Fund, for example, cities like Glasgow can unlock that investment to really accelerate climate activity with our communities, with our supply chains and with our investors. And in doing so, ensure that our residents who have been at the rough end of waves of economic crises since COP26 begin to see the tangible investment benefits of climate investment, not least in their fuel bills. That's a win for everyone, and it's a win for the planet. COP26 was also an incredible shop window for Glasgow's emerging innovation and tech sectors, and supported by some of the strongest civic partnerships in these islands, that triple and indeed quadruple helix of city, of academia, of business, and in actual fact communities and community organisations as well. The potential of our innovation economy was already rapidly emerging in 2021, but in the subsequent 5 years, alongside the space and life science sectors, to name just a couple, pioneering climate technology with global potential and reach is flourishing in Glasgow. And in particular, I'll single out the University of Strathclyde's new Advanced Net Zero Innovation Centre near Glasgow Airport. It's conducting industrial scale research with capabilities for clean energy, for transport and for digital technologies being tested and developed there. And Sustainable Ventures, who are Europe's leading growth partner for climate tech, recently agreed the lease for the Charles Rennie Mackintosh's A-listed lighthouse building on Mitchell Lane, which will become a base for climate tech startups. Sustainable Ventures have already been hugely successful in London and in Manchester, and in this location, alongside Glasgow's existing ecosystem of talent, assets and nearby corporates, will help to deliver our goal of attracting £1 billion of investment and creating 5,000 green jobs in Scotland by 2035. This point, I think, is critical for the transition ambitions, not just here in Glasgow, but across these islands. The UK government's pushing ahead with its GB energy plans, and they, of course, announced Aberdeen as its headquarters in February. And that makes total sense, of course, locating GB Energy in a world-leading energy hub for a whole number of reasons. But transition, and the urban transition especially, is also going to demand that technical innovation that will ensure us clean, sustainable and secure sources of renewable energy, and also get it into people's houses, heating their homes. It's that transition bit that is absolutely crucial. And it's in Glasgow, certainly in Scotland, where the work to ensure that that happens and the innovation to make that happen is taking place. COP26 delivered another prize for Glasgow, and that was the boost to our international profile. And this city that I love, that we all love, that we're so immensely proud of and deeply committed to, it isn't a national capital. It's not one of the world's A-listers. But in recent years, Glasgow has built up international recognition that is the envy of our peers. We are punching way above our weight in profile and enjoying an international presence and indeed international investment, unlike at any time since the height of the industrial age. COP26 didn't create that, but it elevated it, and it was an enormous catalyst. And again, the partnerships that have come out of that, the legacy that have come out of that, the commitment of Glasgow's businesses and business community, including the Chamber of Commerce, has been absolutely instrumental to making that part of our COP26 legacy. We took to the world stage confident as a city in our host status, capable of hosting those global events of scale and significance, a city which was then, and is even more now, a climate leader with an appetite for bold action, a place that's invested substance and meaning into our urban transition. And it's been fantastic to see us collectively build on that profile, increasing overseas city trade missions, attracting that inward investment, promoting our skills, our talents and our assets. And on that, colleagues, I'll finish off with a wee story about a chat that I had in Geneva late last year. I was privileged to be chairing the United Nations Forum of Mayors, Global Forum of Mayors, which focuses on the contributions of cities to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and tries as best as we can to influence the national missions at the United Nations and make that voice of cities heard. And while we were there, we had dinner with the World Economic Forum, and we were reflecting on, around the table, on the multiple threats that were facing the climate agenda, which I alluded to at the top of my speech. And one senior WEF official told me that he and his colleagues, when they're talking about a period when, the period around COP26, when it felt like there was more hope, more positivity, more optimism and a sense of momentum around the climate agenda, their shorthand for that is the Glasgow Times. Not our local newspaper, but the Glasgow Times, the times that happened around COP26 that are indelibly associated in their minds and the mind of so many others with this city, what happened here then and the experience that they had. Colleagues, here in Glasgow, the Glasgow Times have never gone away. They are very much alive, and it's because of the partners here today and many who haven't yet joined us who are committed to that practical climate action and to the solutions that are going to deliver for our planet, our people and our places. So it just remains for me to thank all of you for being part of that, for your contributions to that, and thank you for listening today.